Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm going to take you through my reading plans for 2022. I'm not a big fan of New Year's and New Year's Eve and the pressure to be more productive and all of those things, but one thing I am excited about each year is the start of a new reading year. It feels like it's full of possibilities, full of new reading challenges and reading plans, and it's just something that I'm always excited about, and I also always tend to make a couple of plans. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I usually make a list of 10 books that I want to read in a year, and this list is my priority for that year. If I read anything in a year, it will be those 10 books. And if you want to know how I did on my list for 2021 and on my reading plans for 2021, and you haven't seen that video yet, I'll leave a link to it up above and down below. So I've made one of those lists again. I'm also participating in the Buzzword Reading Challenge again, and I've got one more extra challenge for myself this year, which I'll tell you about at the end of the video. But first, let's go through the 10 books I have to read in 2022. These are all books that I'm excited to read, but that I'm afraid I won't pick up for some reason, or books that are intimidating to me, or books that have been on my shelves for a very long time. And this is my way of making sure that I do end up reading them. So the first book on this list is a very recent acquisition, and it is The Bass Rock by Evie Wyld. This is a book that my parents gifted to me for my birthday in October, so it is very recent, but I do want to make sure that I read this because it sounds really cool and it's just something I really want to read soon. This is a book that spans multiple generations. It's about 3 different women, one in the early 1700s who's accused of being a witch, one in the aftermath of the Second World War who navigates a new house, a new husband, and a new local community, and 6 decades later, someone who's mourning the death of her father and who goes through a house and the belongings. And watching over all 3 is The Bass Rock. It's about sisterhood, survival, new life, and it sounds amazing. Next up is a book that's also not been on my shelves for very long, but it's been on my radar for a very long time, and it's Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is a book that I've heard a lot of people talk about. Some people love it, some people thought it was a bit meh, but I read a Kazuo Ishiguro book in 2020 and really enjoyed that one. I love his writing style. I'm very intrigued by the fact that he writes so many different genres, so I'm excited to pick this one up as well. I found it at the little free library at the end of my street, which was exciting as well because it's a pristine condition, and I'm curious to find out for myself what I think of this one. It's dystopian, about the lives of a group of students growing up in a darkly skewed version of contemporary England, and it's a story of love, friendship and memory, and I'm looking forward to it. Then there's another recent acquisition, and it is Beyond Time, Classic Tales of Time Unwound, edited by Mike Ashley. It's part of the British Library collection, and it is a collection of science fiction short stories about time and about time travel. There are some very famous science fiction authors in here, such as H.G. Wells, and I love science fiction. I want to read more science fiction, but I don't really know that much about the staples of the genre. This collection of short stories seems like a fun way to find more authors I might like, even if they are more classic authors. It's always fun to know more about a genre you like, I think. And it's also fun to have a short story collection on this list to spice things up a little. Next up, there's a book that's been on my shelves for a while longer. I think I bought this in 2020 or 2019. I'm not entirely sure, but it is an absolutely remarkable thing. I wasn't entirely sure if it was remarkable or unremarkable, but it's an absolutely remarkable thing by Hank Green, who is John Green's brother and part of the Vlogbrothers, and this is Hank Green's first book. I think there's also a sequel. I don't know really all that much about this. I think it is a bit sci-fi-ish, but it is set in our contemporary world. A 23-year-old woman stumbles across a giant sculpture. It is like a 10-foot tall transformer wearing a suit of armor, and they take a video of it and upload it to YouTube, and then they kind of become instantly famous. The video goes viral because nobody knows where this statue is coming from. It might be a sign of life from outer space, they're not sure. And then this girl has to suddenly deal with this fame. It is about internet fame and about influencers and influencing, I think, while also being about this strange statue and what does this mean for the world. And I've heard good things about it and I've heard bad things about it. I've seen some people absolutely loving it. I've seen some people just feeling meh about it, and some people just not getting why this book has gained so much popularity. So I'm really interested to find out what I think for myself. Next up, there's another book that's purely on this list because I've had it on my shelves for so long and I was excited to read it, but I just kind of forgot about it, and it's Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is the first book in a sci-fi trilogy by Marissa Meyer. She is the author of the Lunar Chronicles, which is another sci-fi series, a retelling of fairy tales that I really loved. I love that series. I really want to kind of reread it, even though it will take a lot of time. She also wrote Heartless, which I enjoyed, so I'm not entirely sure why I didn't pick this one up, why it's been languishing on my shelves for such a long time, but this is the year that I will read it, and who knows, perhaps I'll find a new favorite YA series. It might happen. I know some people who really love this series, but I don't see it around that much, which might be why I kind of tend to forget about it. I'm also now just noticing that it is kind of torn. How did that happen? Damn it. Anyway, it's about a syndicate of prodigies, humans with extraordinary abilities who emerged from the ruins of a crumbled society and established peace and order where chaos reigned. I think it's also about some villains. I'm not entirely sure, but I am excited to read it. Next up, there's The Strawberry Thief by Joanne Harris. This is the 4th book in the Chocolat series, and this book is the book that started my reread of that series in 2020. I bought this book in 2020, and I decided that I wanted to reread the first 3 books because it had been a very long time, and I wanted to get myself back up to speed with what's going on with this series before reading this one, and that kind of took a turn. Still loved the first book. I ended up not really liking the second book, and also not really liking the third book. And I remember really loving the third book when I first read it. So I am kind of apprehensive about reading this 4th book now, because although I loved Chocolat, the second and third book really didn't live up to my memories of it. That's kind of why I put it on this list, because I'm afraid I'll just put off reading it otherwise. It is again about Vianne Rocher. She is still in Lansquenet-sous-Than, the place that once rejected her, and it is about her chocolate shop. So kind of back to basics, like in the first book. I'm excited, but also apprehensive to read it. Then there's another book that's been on my shelves for quite a long time, and it's White Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. It is a very short book, and I always keep thinking, oh, I'll pick that up next and read that in between other books, and then I just don't do it. So it's a good one to put on this list. It is inspired by Jane Eyre, and it's the story about the mad woman in the attic from Jane Eyre. It is written much more recently than Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte was, but it's also still quite an old book. It was first published in 1966, so it's been a while. I thought it was older than that, but 1966. And it's about the mad woman in the attic. How did she get where she ended up? What was her life like beforehand? And I'm really intrigued by that, and I just want to make sure that I finally read this, because it sounds like something that I would really love. Then there's a classic. I always do try to put a classic on this list because I tend to not pick them up just randomly, and this time I've chosen Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I still haven't read all of Jane Austen's books, and I want to, and this is one of the next ones that I still have to read. So yeah, that's basically why it's on here. I really like Jane Austen, and I hope I'll like this one too. Now we've gotten to the most intimidating book on this list, and it's also the only Dutch book on this list. And it's Anna by Anne-Jet van der Zijl. This is the biography, quite a big biography, of Annie M.G. Schmid. And Annie M.G. Schmid was a children's book writer. She passed away, I think in the 90s, it might have been the early 2000s, but I think it was in the 90s. It might have even have been before I was born. No, she passed away in the early 90s when I was like 2 years old. She was amazing. I really love her. She was very funny. She wrote great children's books that are still classics in Dutch children's literature. She wrote very funny poems. She also wrote for adults, I think. She wrote stuff for TV. I think she wrote plays. She did so much, and she was a woman doing all that in a time when that wasn't really all that much appreciated yet. So I'm really intrigued to read this biography. I've had it on my shelves for, I think, 4 or 5 years now, because it's just so big, and I don't read a lot of biographies, and I don't read a lot of Dutch. So that's why I just don't pick it up. And I've also read another book by Anne-Jet van der Zijl before that I really enjoyed, so I'll probably end up really loving this. I think I'll just start it this month or maybe next month and just read it slowly throughout the year. And the final book is a book that's been on my shelves, I think, for over 10 years. I think I bought this book on a holiday in England in 2011, but I'm not entirely sure. It's been a long time either way. And it's The Brontes: A Life in Letters by Juliet Barker. And it's basically what it says on the cover. It's about the Bronte sisters, and it's letters mostly from Charlotte Bronte to other people. And Juliet Barker is kind of an expert on the Bronte family, I believe. And I've started this. I think there's actually a bookmark in here on page 8. So I started it but didn't get very far. I've been really intrigued to read this, but somehow just don't read it. I think because I don't read a lot of non-fiction and I'm not really that comfortable reading non-fiction as opposed to fiction. It's just not something I pick up regularly. But I love the Brontes. I'm so intrigued by them as a family and as authors. So this year I will finally pick it up and read it completely. So that was my list of 10 books that I will definitely read. Now we've got 2 more challenges to talk about. The first one is the Buzzword Reading Challenge, which I also participated in 2021 for the first time. It is a reading challenge that's basically about the titles of books. For every month there is a word or a group of words or something like that for which you'll need to read a book with that word in the title. I'm having a really hard time explaining this, so I'm just going to go through the words for this year. I have them on my phone if I can find them. Yes, the Buzzword Reading Challenge. I'll also leave a link down below to the announcement video and stuff like that. For January, the idea is to read a book with the 5 W's in it, or one of the 5 W's. So what, where, when, who, why, or how, I think is also possible. I'm not sure yet which book I'll be reading, but I think it might be When No One Is Watching. I don't know who the author of that one is, but I've got it on audiobook and I'm really interested in reading it. I don't have books for all of these, by the way. I just pick and choose as I go along. But last year I did manage to read a book for every month, and I'm going to try to do that this year as well. For February, the prompt is pronouns and possessives. For March, it's locations. For April, it's big or little. For May, it's directions, so north, south, I think, I don't know. For June, it's the word all. For July, it's book-related words, so bookshop, writing, whatever. For August, it's just items in general, which is very broad. For September, it's light or dark. For October, it's creatures and animals, for which I'm thinking I might read Beartown by Frederick Backman. For November, it's a word ending in ing, and for December, it's numbers. So this year, it's more like categories than it's actual words, which is making things a little bit easier, because last year I did have some trouble finding books for the prompts of that month. So this will be a lot of fun, I think, and I'm excited to participate in it again. Like I said, I'll leave all of the stuff down below if you want to know about this too. It's just a fun extra challenge that will make putting together a TBR for the month a bit more interesting, and will maybe make me pick up books I wasn't planning on picking up or didn't think I would pick up, so that's fun, I think. So then we move on to my final reading plans for this year, which is not something that's connected to like a challenge or anything. It's just something I'd like to do for myself, and that is to read 1 book by Agatha Christie or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle a month. I've already started the first one. I'm reading And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie this month, which I'm very excited about. I was planning on just reading 1 Agatha Christie each month because she's written so many books, and I set myself the challenge of reading all her Hercule Poirot books chronologically. And then I decided that I wanted to switch things up a little, and I really want to read more of the Sherlock Holmes books as well. So I'm just going to mix it up and read some of those in between as well. And Then There Were None doesn't have anything to do with Hercule Poirot. It's a standalone novel, but it is one of her most famous ones, if not her most famous one. And I'm just very intrigued by it and I want to read it. So that's my final reading challenge for this year. We'll see if it's actually something that I will stick to. If not, if it's just too much Agatha Christie or too much Sherlock for me, then I won't have a problem with stopping this challenge. It's just, I thought it was fun to try this. So that's it for this video. In a comment down below, please let me know if you have any books that you're excited to read for this year, if you're participating in any reading challenges, things like that. I'd love to hear about it. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me in the future, and have a wonderful day. Bye!